But first tonight, the anti-Semitic Greens politician who claimed that Jews have their tentacles everywhere, you remember that comment just a couple of weeks ago, well, she's now been celebrated as the guest of honour at a public school. Jenny Leong was criticised by Albanese just a few weeks ago for these remarks.
The Jewish lobby and the Zionist lobby are infiltrating into every single aspect of what is ethnic community groups. They rock up and they're part of the campaign. They offer support for things like the campaign against the 18C racial vilification laws. They offer solidarity. They rock up to every community event and meeting to offer that connection because their tentacles reach in to the areas that try and influence power. And I think that we need to call that out and expose it.
I mean, those comments were so bad that even the Labor politician Josh Burns, he called it one of the most blatantly racist and bigoted things that any politician had ever uttered in the country. And Liberal MP Julian Leeser expressed his outrage. Both the Prime Minister and Dutton said the comments were despicable. And it was only after all of this criticism that Jenny Leong eventually apologised.
The comments by my local member, the member for Newtown, whose comments about tentacles with regard to the Jewish community, I find offensive. I find it had its origins in anti-Semitism, and I condemn it unequivocally.
Not one Greens MP, state or federal, has called out and publicly rebuked Ms Leong. Not one. Not one. They all have remained silent. Right now, Jewish people in Australia don't feel safe and respected by the Greens.
To the members of the Greens I say, I don't have tentacles. Neither does my 5-year-old son or my 2-year-old daughter. Neither does my friend the member for McNamara or the member for Isaacs or the member for Macarthur, and neither do the patriotic Jewish Australians who contribute to the country they love.
And yet, a New South Wales public school has invited Jenny Leong to be their guest of honour just on Friday. Some in the audience were shocked to see this anti-Semitic politician walk out to present high-achieving students with awards at the Fort Street High School Speech Day. She handed out the Year 7 prizes. This was all held at Sydney's Town Hall. There were several hundred parents there just on Friday. There were also staff and students. And even those who weren't Jewish, I'm told, were troubled by the school inviting Leong, this anti-Semitic politician, to present the awards. You can see the photographs that someone who was there has sent me. The Education Department's Marrickville Network Principals Director was also there. You wonder what the Education Department has to say about this. Now, elder political statesman, former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer, says that he used to think the Greens were little more than a well-meaning but wacky environmentalist party. But he says he's now realised that the Greens are ominous. He says they're extremist ideologues who embrace anti-Semitism. And he wrote an article in The Fin where he referenced Jenny Leong's remarks, and he said that never has a political party so racist, confrontational and divisive been elected to the Australian Parliament. He says what the Greens have done is give legitimacy to anti-Semitism. We've already reported that Fort Street High School has had problems with extensive pro-Palestinian activism over the past few months. They've had posters plastered around the campus. They've had teachers arguing that they should be able to wear the keffiyeh, that's the Palestinian black and white checkered scarf, to school. But Jenny Leong being invited to present awards just 3 weeks after those horrific and offensive comments sends a message to students that, unlike other forms of racism, racism against Jews is somehow to be tolerated. This is a dangerous message to send, that anti-Semitism should be condoned and is acceptable. And this is precisely one of the findings of a new report that's coming out tomorrow on anti-Semitism in Australian schools. These are schools across the country, by the way. I've been given an advanced copy to share with you tonight. Now, it found that some school communities and leaders are apparently unwilling to treat anti-Semitic behaviour with the same level of concern as other forms of discrimination. We all know that's true. This report includes, it's a YouGov survey of about 510 public school teachers, and it found that 24% had either witnessed, knew about, or had direct experience of anti-Semitism. And the report concludes that incidents of racism and anti-Semitism remain concerningly pervasive among the student population. The report says that the data suggests that there are roughly 75,000 anti-Semitic incidents in public schools across Australia each year. I mean, that seems like a stunning number. It's hard to believe that's even true. One teacher said that they suffered consequences after they reported anti-Semitism. And the teacher was quoted in this report saying, "I have learnt to keep my head down and mouth shut or risk losing my job." Now, public school teachers are partly to blame, with the report finding that the factors that cause this racism include apathy towards anti-Semitism among some members of the teaching workforce, also poor teaching approaches when it comes to teaching the Holocaust. There's a lot of conflating of the political with the personal, and the influence of social media in spreading and normalising anti-Semitic content. The report also discusses what it calls the new anti-Semitism, where the politicisation of the Israel-Hamas war means that criticism of Israel has morphed into irrational hatred of Jews. Now, the Blueprint Institute, which did this report, found that Australian students are experiencing vilification and physical aggression rationalised by disdain for the actions of a foreign government. Proving this very point was the response of one teacher who said, and I quote, "If the Israelis stopped treating neighbouring countries and their people so bad, people might not hate them so much." Gotta hope that teacher isn't an English teacher. Now, the report calls for more leadership from the federal government, and the CEO of the Blueprint Institute is going to be on the show a bit later. But surely, at the most basic level, and we don't need a report to tell us this, if you're trying to encourage a successful multicultural society for our next generation of children, if the Education Department doesn't want to have racial division in the classroom and at schools, then surely they wouldn't invite a Greens politician guilty of blatantly offensive and a racist remark into a public school to hand out prizes just a few weeks after she accused Jews of spreading our tentacles everywhere. Children are impressionable. They're vulnerable to influence. And I have to tell you, Jenny Leong's influence is toxic.